Once again, thanks for being with us this morning. We'll go ahead and get started with Associate Head Coach and Special Teams Coordinator Brian Polian, who's here to answer your questions. Coach Polian, we're going to go ahead and start with Tim Priester.
Morning, Brian.
Morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. We talked to Jay Bramblett the other day. Could you provide some insight on him, his demeanor, what it's like coaching him, his strengths, and maybe are some of the points of emphasis that you have with him to keep him on point?
I think anytime you ask a freshman to assume a starting role, even as a specialist, that's pretty heady stuff. And Jay handled it really, really well. The one thing I noticed at the end of his freshman year, it felt like he just kind of got physically worn out. The length of our season, and obviously there's a lot of pressure involved. And I think he was, mentally and physically kind of exhausted by the end of his freshman year. I thought last year was tough on all of our specialists when we lost all of our spring in terms of spring practices and all that conditioning. I thought he did a very good job last year. But the next step in the progression now is to be more consistent, in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the, turning the ball over and making sure that we don't have that 36-yard punt. Even our misses have to be good. But I've been very pleased with Jay's progress here this spring, and I love coaching him. The mentality of a starting pitcher, of a quarterback. There's a mental toughness there. He's not a sensitive guy. He takes coaching. So it's been a joy to work with Jay, and I expect that he will take the next step now in his progression to becoming a really high caliber punter in terms of his consistency.
We'll hand it over next to Tyler James.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to ask about Jay as well. He wasn't necessarily booming a lot of punts last year, but the net punting was really good with not a lot of returns. How do you balance that, and how much credit goes to him and how much credit goes to the coverage team for that net punting last year?
You don't balance it, Tyler. The only number that matters is net punting. It's the only number that matters. And nationally, we were pretty good as it relates to net punt. The only thing that matters is a 58-yard punt down the middle of the field that gets returned for 25 yards because we've out-punted the coverage. That's not a good punt. And that's what I'm trying to get. That was the battle that was fought with Tyler Newsome for a year or two. And now with Jay is to understand that a 44-yard fair catch is a tremendous punt in the eyes of the special teams coordinator and the head coach, because any net punt over 40 yards is excellent. It's above average. It'll put you in the top probably 20 to 25 in the country. And that's our goal, is to have a 40-yard net. And if Jay hits a 48-yard punt and we tackle the guy for a 6-yard return, we're a 42-yard net, I'm okay. But a 42-yard fair catch is just as good. So we focus on net punting here. Now, there are times, obviously, that we want to try and flip the field. And I do think that Jay's got some more pop in his leg than what we showed. But think back to the Rose Bowl. I mean, he has one punt against Smith where he forces a fair catch. It's high hang time. It's a tremendous kick. And there was another one deep in the red zone where we outpunted the coverage and we gave up an 18 to 20-yard return because, we're out kicking the guys getting down there trying to cover the ball. So that is what we are constantly trying to manage, quite frankly. And the only number that matters to us is the net punt, because in the end, that is the number that is signifying the transfer of field position.
We'll go next to Eric Hansen.
Hey, Coach. Good morning.
Morning.
I wanted to ask about Jonathan Doerer, and this might relate to what you had said about not having spring last year, but toward the end of the season, his accuracy on field goals wasn't the same as it had been for a while. What do you feel like that was? Was it a mechanical thing, something up above the eyebrows, and how is he performing so far this spring?
John's been good this spring. I do believe, I recognize, and so does John, that in the second half of the season, that, there were some kicks missed that frankly just need to be made. I think back to North Carolina, we have a relatively short field goal where we have the opportunity to make it a 2-score game. The short one in the ACC championship game, those kicks need to be made, and John knows that, and he'd be the first one to tell you. I think personally, there were some mechanical issues, something that he couldn't quite get comfortable with, and then it became a confidence thing. And hey, I'm going to be super careful here, and instead of getting up there and swinging at the ball, I'm just going to try and ease it through the uprights. And it's frustrating to him, and it's frustrating to me that I couldn't help him more at the end of the year, because you think back to the Clemson game, and we don't win that game without John Doerer. I mean, I believe he made 4 field goals, a couple of them over 44, 45 yards. He made 3 kicks at the end of the game that either tied it or kept it tight. Those were pressure-filled situations. We know he can do it on the biggest stage, so we've got to, help him get back to those mechanical, making sure that we're rock solid mechanically, so that then the confidence comes with that. I think John really was affected by the loss of the spring and part of the summer last year. There's no doubt. I mean, he said as much. He just, it didn't, physically, he didn't feel like he did the year before. So, but look, we all dealt with it across the country, and we got to battle through. And I expect great things from John. I'm glad he's back, and I think he will have a terrific bonus year here. Exercising the COVID option and coming back, I'm really expecting big things from John.
We'll go next to Patrick Engel.
Hey, Brian, since you changed titles and added the associate head coach responsibility, I'm just kind of curious what's been kind of different in your day-to-day and some things you've been handling more that you wouldn't have been in the prior roles.
Sure. And I appreciate that question. I mean, it's between Mike and I think it's a little bit unusual that responsibilities would shift the way that they did with no turnover on the staff. But philosophically, for Coach Kelly, a fresh perspective and a little bit of change while keeping continuity, I think is a good thing. And that's the way that I viewed it. I attacked the job of recruiting coordinator from a very specific point of view. I had very specific goals in mind when I took on that responsibility, and think we accomplished a lot of them. Very proud of the class that we put together with no on-campus recruiting, with no contact. So all of those things I thought were good, but I also see how Mike is attacking the job, what he's emphasizing, what's important to him. And quite frankly, I recognize that a fresh set of eyes after a while and a different approach is a healthy thing. And Mike and I, we both want what's best for the program, and we want to serve Coach Kelly and do what we can do to build this thing to win a national championship. As it relates to my new role, a lot of this, my experience at Nevada prepared me for. I mean, Coach Quinn and I are the only two in the building that have any understanding of what Coach Kelly goes through, because to a much smaller extent, we've experienced it. But, I am able to take my experience from my time at Nevada as the head coach, and I can apply those things to the responsibilities that Coach Kelly's asked me to take on, whether it be a liaison with NCAA legislation, seeing the big picture with our football team, communicating with our football team, whatever it is he asked me to do. And some of the football responsibilities I had just naturally taken on already. I mean, the communication throughout the course of the game, all those things kind of fit the job description already anyway. So I think it's been a healthy transition. I'm not involved in the day-to-day grind of the recruiting the way I was. I am not watching film with both sides of the ball the way that I was previously. I'm focused now on my specific recruiting areas. And then, you know, the time away from recruiting is wherever Coach Kelly needs me. And ultimately, look, my job is to serve our players and serve the head coach in any responsibility he deems necessary. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm happy to do it.
We'll go next to Loose Emoji.
Good morning, Coach. You've always had some mainstays there on the special teams, such as Chase Claypool and Alohi Gilman and Bo Bauer and Isaiah Foskey prior last year. Yeah. Who are some of those guys who can play all four units? And how is also the return game, specifically with punt, shaping up as far as candidacies there?
Okay, so I appreciate that question because it allows me the opportunity. Jack Lamb decided to graduate transfer to, I believe he ended up at Colorado and seeking more playing time on defense. But Jack Lamb might have been our best special teams player last year. I mean, he played phenomenally. Brock Wright was a staple and the signal caller on the punt team, another guy that is going to be hard to replace. Thankfully, Bo Bauer, Kaiser, Leofau, Pryor, Houston, I am very blessed this year. A lot of our core guys are veterans that have played a bunch. I want J.D. Bertrand to take on a more expanded role. I want to identify some wide receivers. Can Styles help us? You know, can Jay Brunell find a way to get on the field to help us? You know, I'm excited to get Audric in when he reports in the fall, because to have a running back body that size, I think he can be a 4-unit special teams player. You know, we've got to get Ramon Henderson going. We've got to get Clarence Lewis going. I'm really pleased with the camp that KJ Wallace has had so far. I am very pleased with Justin Walters and Philip Riley. They are fast risers right now in all the work that we're doing. So we'll identify who those core guys are. We've lost a couple that were trusted players that we have to get replaced, but we're bringing a lot of vets back, which I feel lucky about. As it relates to the punt return game, I'm glad this question got asked because, you know, there's a lot of chatter out there about that. Like, why can't we just put Chris Tyree back there to catch a punt? And I don't think that people understand how difficult how difficult it is to catch a punt and how specialized a skill that is. And we recognize how good a football player Chris Tyree is, but in the end, the security of the football and the transition of it from our defense to our offense is the single most important factor. And if Chris is not yet comfortable, and there are times when he articulates to us, I'm not quite there yet, I'm not going to roll him out there, you know, on national TV if he's not comfortable yet. We've had Styles back there catching, which has been very encouraging. Riley has been catching balls. Keys has been back there. Tyree continuing to work. But in the end, whatever choice we make will be with ball security first in mind. That's the priority, the transition of the football. And I think what you saw last year was when we made the decision to put Salerno back there because he catches the ball, we amped up our pressure and we blocked 2 punts, and we've blocked some punts now the last couple of years, but there are a bunch of times that we get close and we force a 38-yard punt. Well, that's that's a good thing. If we heat people up and we make them uncomfortable and we force a poor kick, that's as good as an 8 to 10 yard return. So, it will shift our mindset a little bit, but in the end, whoever's back there, the first choice is going to be predicated on ball security first and foremost.
We'll move next to Pete Sampson.
Brian, I think that Isaiah Foskey was a bit of a rarity or over the weekend when we talked to him, when we talked about his role, and he's like, yeah, I still want to be on special teams, whatever my role is on defense. And he was lobbying for punt. Obviously he's had some blocks. Like, why is he good in that role? What makes him a little bit unique? And I guess, what would you say to lobby to keep him on all your teams?
Well, the lobbying sometimes is not under my control. What makes him unique and special, first and foremost, is his desire to be out there in the same way that Chase Claypool was. And it was really interesting on Pro Day to talk with Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert from the Steelers and have them say how unique it was for Chase to catch a touchdown and then come back and want to be on the kickoff team, and how much they appreciated that. And stories like that, I'm constantly trying to share back with our football team, because I want to show them that we are increasing your value. Like, we're here to win games, but I also want to make you more valuable in the eyes of the National Football League. And Isaiah Foskey will be more valuable when his time comes, because he's such a dynamic special teams player. His desire to be out there and not have the attitude that, hey, I'm a frontline defensive player, I don't need to be rushing punts or covering kicks. That makes him unique, and that's a product of the culture that Coach Kelly and I are trying to build. And frankly, it's a product of Chase Claypool, of guys like that, of Jeremiah Owusu covering kickoffs, and having our Alohi Gilman, our best guys, were always on our punt team. And now when younger players see that, they expect that to be the norm. Now, physically, what makes him different, length in the special teams is so valuable. And that's what made Chase so good. When you have guys that can run and play with power, but have length. Foskey's so long, he's got long arms, he's tall. Those guys are hard to block. And frankly, he's good at blocking kicks because he's so long levered. He doesn't have to pop clean. You think about the one at Pitt, he came clean because we got lucky, we schemed it up. But when you think back to a year or two ago, Stanford, he blocks that punt. He's got a defender on him, but he gets his arm over the top and he's so long, he blocks the punt. So his length combined with how explosive he is as an athlete makes him hard to handle on special teams.
We'll hand it over next to Tim O'Malley.
Coach, you've had a couple years now with the fair catch rule on kickoffs inside the 25-yard line. How do you balance your analytics with having a guy like Chris Tyree back there, or a dangerous return man, when you want to try to set up field position?
Yeah, I mean, there are weeks that I will go to Coach Kelly and say, hey, my suggestion is here, we let it rip. I feel like we have a chance. And I thought Chris did a really good job last year. I mean, that transition from high school to college is not easy. It's faster. There were two that when I look back on film, I felt like should have been home runs where he just didn't quite see it. But I've also, looking back this year in my offseason study, when I look at every Power 5 kickoff return that went back for a touchdown, there are very few that, you got to make somebody miss at the point of attack, or you take the ball out the back door and somebody over pursued. And, Chris will find those creases. He has the ability to make people miss. I felt like overall our kickoff return got a little bit better, but that is the one phase that just, I've got to get figured out. What do I need to do as a coach better to put our guys in more advantageous scenarios here? So that's been something that we've studied hard here the off season, because we do feel like we have an electric return man. And if we go into a week and feel like we're going to get legit opportunities, that we want to take advantage of them.
We will circle back to Tyler James.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to ask about Michael Vinson, the long snapping job. I mean, you guys have been blessed to have really good long snappers in the past, scholarship guys, but he stepped in and sort of broke that pattern a bit from being a non-scholarship guy. What allowed him to maybe be a pleasant surprise, at least to us outsiders?
Well, it was a pleasant surprise to the insiders too. Michael is one of the hardest working football players I've ever been around in my entire career. And we have to use the preferred walk-on program at Notre Dame to build depth with our specialists, because we can't dedicate 5 or 6 scholarships to the specialist group. The scholarship model does not allow for that. At a state school where it's a little bit easier to gain admission and doesn't cost as much, you can bring in 3 or 4 walk-ons at each spot and just let them battle it out and figure out where the depth is going to come from. At Notre Dame, you got to be admissible to school. You got to be willing to pay the freight, because obviously the value of this education is not cheap. And we invited Michael into the program as a freshman because we felt like he had potential to be the backup, that he could get us out of a game if we had to. And over the course of 2 years, he worked so diligently and so hard off to the side on his own. And he worked so hard at trying to get stronger and to be athletic enough to function on the coverage units down there, trying to cover a punt against Devontae Smith. And I can't express how proud I am that we brought a scholarship freshman in and Michael beat him out fair and square. And that's all we can promise, is that, hey, Michael, you'll get the chance. You'll get the chance to compete. And sure enough, he won the job, and he won it cleanly. And I'm just so proud of him. And he's a joy to be around. He loves Notre Dame. His family loves Notre Dame. He makes the mood in any room he walks into brighter. His teammates adore him. And just one of those great success stories that for the rest of my career, I'll be able to point at that guy and say, look, I mean, he never stopped working. He never stopped grinding. And he turned himself into a starter on one of the top 10 football programs in the country.
We'll wrap it up this morning with Eric Hansen.
Brian, I wanted to circle back to the punt return question and just kind of follow up with this. I know a lot of fans get frustrated because they seem to see a lot of fair catches. I'm not sure that's reality, but they seem to see a lot of fair catches. Now, you were the special teams guy there when Zibby was the punt returner.
Yeah.
I don't know that we saw a lot of punt fair catches with him. So is your philosophy a little bit different, or are you saying ball security first, and if we can be dynamic with it, we're going to do that? I just want to follow up on that. Or is fair catch, that's good enough, we got possession, let's go?
No, there's 2 things here, and it's a really good question. First of all, I don't think it's fair to say that, boy, we've been fair catch central. Chris Fink averaged nearly a first down every time he returned a punt, which that's our goal, is we want to average 10 yards per return and take a first down away from the offense. And unfortunately, Fink had 1 touchdown called back against Duke. He got tackled on the 5. Against Wake Forest, he got tackled on the 3, which I thought happened just because Fink doesn't like me. He just was mad at me, and he didn't want us to have a punt return touchdown. But no, as it relates to when you look back to Zibby and 5, 8, 10 years ago, the game has changed. Punt has changed. Everybody in college used to look like the NFL with the 2 wide gunners, and I'd put Mike Anello out there, and we'd have the vertical set, cut protection, and we'd look like the NFL. And you would get more returnable punts. But with the shield punt, with the college rules, are different than the NFL rules. Anybody can leave at the snap of the ball. So now you're getting these big wide formations. You're getting the 3 fat guys in the back forming the shield, which is what we do. And I was probably one of the last guys to transition to this. But that concept, that style of punt makes it harder. I mean, you've got too many people around the returner when the ball's coming down. I think, in my opinion, you get 1, maybe 2 really legitimate opportunities to return a punt in a game. And what we preach to the team is you never know which 1 or 2 it's going to be. And we've got to be, working on all cylinders every snap so that when we do get a legit return opportunity, that we can take advantage of it. And that's the challenge for us. But the reality of it is the game has changed. The style of punt, the rugby punts, the balls on the ground, the amount of people that are around your returner as the ball's coming down, that has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. And if you don't recognize that change and you're just saying, boy, they used to return more punts than they do now. I mean, you got to recognize that the game has changed.
All right, and we will wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks, guys.